Hello, once again, and welcome to Net Rights Pod. Fortunately, or more like unfortunately, this will be our very last episode for the season titled Women, Taxation and Justice Shaping Fair Futures. I am sad to be leaving you, but it's too early to say goodbye. Maybe it's not even a goodbye. Today, we're wrapping up the conversation we've been having over the past couple of episodes with a conversation that we've titled Social Contracts and Women's Rights. I don't see a better episode to wrap up this season with. I have a very amazing guest with me that I'll be having this conversation with. But before we get into the conversations, you know what to do. Join the discussions. Join NetRight on all platforms. Follow us on Instagram at netright_GH. Facebook, it's NetRight Ghana, and on X, it's at NetRight. Trust me, you want to stick and stay with us. Like I mentioned, I have a very interesting guest with me today in the studio. Her name is Beauty Emefa Nate. Again, you know what we do. We let our guests tell us who they are. So Emefa, who is Emefa?
Thank you very much. So Beauty Emefa Nate is the Executive Secretary of the Ghana Anti-Corruption Coalition. And I'm also a proud member of the NetRight and very active in that space. So I'm here to reflect on some of the things that we do connected with the issues of women and then taxation.
Right. Yeah. Awesome. And you know, my name as always is Abena Beniwafo, so I am your host. Before we link social contracts to women's rights, for the benefit of those who are watching us or listening to us and may not know what social contract is, what exactly is social contract?
Thank you very much. And then I also want to say thank you for this opportunity. And thanks to our listeners and viewers and all those who are watching us. Generally, when we talk about social contracts, it's an agreement. In most cases, it may not be written. So an agreement between a power holder and those who, in a way, give them the power.
Right.
Or generally between somebody in the society we could have between somebody who is in a privileged position and also another person who has given that person the role. So usually occurs between, in our space, you know, for instance, when we talk about elections, citizens would queue to elect somebody that they are giving the person the duty, you know, to be in a position that they as citizens are given to that person. And then through the process of the person's the being in office, then the person's supposed to also give account to that. So what are citizens giving? What are they expecting from the person they are giving that kind of? So these are expectations, these are roles, these are responsibilities that all come up to guide in terms of the framework of social contract.
Right. So this is a contract between us as citizens and the government we have
For
elected.
instance, yes. So what is our expectation when we put somebody in office as a president?
Right.
What's our citizens' expectation? Why would somebody queue or wake up at dawn to go and queue and put somebody in public office? What is the expectation? Yes.
Right. Now that we've got this down and also talking about expectations and responsibilities and accountability, what does the social contract mean for women taxpayers?
Okay. So still using the framework of social contract, when we talk about women taxpayers, and these are a unique group. For instance, when we talk about Ghana or Ghanaian women taxpayers, if you take the population of Ghana, women are the majority. Going by the 2021 census, we have over 50% of the population being women. And also meaning that when women who in this group who are taxpayers, we find a lot of them in the informal sector, but also have women also in the formal sector. So they all have different expectations.
Right.
So women in the informal sector also having expectations, when they pay tax, what do they want to see in return for their tax payment? The same way, women in the formal sector also pay tax.
Right.
For instance, the income tax that is deducted at source. What are women taxpayers expecting in return for the taxes that they pay? So that is where we look at it in terms of the social contract. So I'm giving government something.
Right.
I'm giving government these resources. I'm giving government a part of my income, a part of my earning. What is my expectation as a woman to get from government as a woman?
Right. Right. I'm really glad that you've really espoused on this, because in our one of the conversations we had with women who are working at the community level, we talked about some of the frustrations that some of these women have, that they're fulfilling the social contract on their end, but they are not seeing anything happening from the government side. And that brings us into my next question. How do we deal with this trust deficits that currently exist, especially from women? Because they're paying these taxes, but there are hospitals without maternity beds. Women's healthcare isn't the best, reproductive healthcare isn't the best in this country. And so there's this huge trust deficit that women now, they're not even encouraged to pay taxes, with the exception of the income taxes that we don't have a choice with, it's automatically deducted. But the women in the informal sector, for example, who have to make the effort to pay the money themselves, and they're very disgruntled. How do we deal with this tax deficit?
Okay, so before
trust deficit.
We go to the issue of trust deficit in terms of tax payment, we'll have to look at what's technically why we have to pay taxes.
Right.
And then look at the avenues for paying the tax. So, for instance, why we pay taxes is to support government to get the resources that they need, to support development. For instance, the issue of hospitals, not just the building, but hospitals having medicine that's, is available when it is needed. And then also, if it's education, what kind of education is government for? So all these are avenues that government mobilizes funds. So for women, especially who form the majority in this country, the question is that when we give this money to government, our needs being met, as part of that, is government looking at our needs, even in the payment. So not even in the utilization of the resources, but the avenues that are there, and how it's even the issue when we talk about taxation. Is it gender sensitive? So is government paying attention, to the situation of women when they are even putting in tax policies? That is where we even need to start the conversation from, because that is when women will know that, okay, the government has taken me into consideration. So the policies are women friendly and women sensitive. And that way, when a woman is paying her tax, she knows that the government has consciously addressed her needs in that.
Exactly.
So I will want to first look at the issue of the payment. So let's look at the informal sector, for instance. A market woman has to pay, some form of tax. How is the payment done? What are the avenues put in place? Does she need to work physically to a GRA office to pay the tax? Or have they put in some measures for her to be able to pay the tax? For instance, does the GRA have more of an officer detailed to a market center who the woman can always go through? Because even if you look at our tax laws, they are a bit complex. Even for some of us who are a bit educated, sometimes it's even difficult for us to even understand without going to a tax expert. So if a woman who may not have that kind of understanding of the tax system, do we really have somebody that she can easily go to, who is an expert that she can speak to, who will break it to her understanding in her
Right.
own language, that she understands, so that in paying, she knows that, okay, this is why I am being charged XYZ,
Right.
and this is why I am paying. So are we making that effort? So those are the sensitivities that we need to understand, and that helps what we call voluntary tax compliance. Then it increases people's appetite to pay because they understand what the tax
Right.
is. That is
Right.
one. They also know what the tax will be used for. So that is one side of it. Then we now come back to the issue of utilization. So now you understand, you have made the effort to pay, but do you also understand what the money is used for? So for instance, going back to the market, what is the needs, are the needs that market women have that the tax, contributes to
Addressing.
supporting, so that the women in the market can see that, when we pay the taxes, perhaps the road around the market is done. So then people who are coming to the market can have easy access. So those are some of the incentives that will motivate people once they see the utilization. And then we now talk about the issue of accountability. How are we accounting
Yeah.
to citizens that are beyond just going to parliament, where the finance minister will go to
Read the
account,
budget, yeah.
give accounts nationally? Are we also having ways that we can account to people who are also contributors,
Right.
to know that, okay, when I contribute, this is what the money has been used for? So
Yeah.
you have to look at all these elements, and that's what builds the trust. So once there is element of transparency, there is element of accountability around the collection of the tax, even the policy aspect, the collection, and the utilization. It builds a lot of trust. It helps citizens to understand, so that when government is not able to get the resources, the citizens even become the people who would ensure that leakages that they see, they then help police that to prevent it, because they then see what the resources is doing for them. So they also then support government to prevent leakages, or report even some colleagues who are not, paying taxes or trying to evade or avoid taxes. Yeah.
Right. So would you say that the current trust deficit is partly due to the lack of inadequate or the lack of systems and structures, of accountability, more especially from top to bottom, or like from the district level, assembly level, all the way to national level? Would you say that this lack of structural accountability partly
Yeah, I
caused
think it's
this?
largely a disconnect between the taxpayers and those who collect it and use it. So if we don't build that bridge, so the point is that the tax, the one who collects it is GRA.
Right.
Technically. So if we are looking at the national taxes and not the other local level,
Yeah.
but so if we are looking at taxes as national taxes, the institution mandated is GRA.
Yeah.
So these actors are all dealing with, or women are dealing with GRA. So it means that GRA has to do a lot in terms of education,
Right.
sensitization, and bringing these people along. So if GRA is supposed to do that and achieves that, then on one leg we have informed taxpayers, who both the informal sector taxpayers and the formal sector
yeah.
taxpayers. Sometimes we forget that the formal sector taxpayers also have different or unique needs.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
when we say formal sector taxpayers, it even includes people in the public sector.
Right. Right.
So it is not exclusive
Hmm.
to just people who are in the private sector,
Yeah.
or in the, maybe let's say, civil society,
Hmm.
but even people in the public sector also pay income tax.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it means that GRA has all these wide stakeholders that they will need to engage them differently.
Right.
So if I'm a public sector worker, my needs will definitely be different from
Hmm.
somebody who is a female in a private sector.
Right.
So then we need to find ways of engaging them differently.
Hmm.
So we cannot do one-off communication and believe that we have been able to achieve our aim, because
Hmm.
the needs are different.
Yeah.
That's why we have to use multiple channels.
Yeah.
But even before you can identify the channels, you need to identify the people and their unique needs, so that you can then target them and
Yeah.
be able to reach them. So if we have informed taxpayers, both in the public sector, private sector, and the informal sector, or nationwide, then we are now going to look at the tax transparency and accountability. After GRA has collected, what happens to the money? Of course, GRA is not a spender. So GRA collects,
Yeah.
but gives it to the Ministry of
Right. Yeah.
Finance. That is the budget holder, I mean the
Yeah.
fund holder.
Yeah.
And the fund also, the Ministry of Finance distributes
Right.
that fund. So how is the Ministry of Finance also doing its best to disseminate accountability
Right.
to all these target stakeholders, so that it should not be assumed that, okay, for instance, you are a woman in the public sector, so you should know that the money you are paid comes from your taxes automatically.
Right.
It doesn't work like that. So the Ministry of Finance also has to target its accountability differently to all these stakeholders, knowing that GRA is the one collecting. If you are able to account to the citizens, all of them differently, to appreciate that
Right.
the money that is collected is not ending in somebody's pocket, which is also the corruption element. So once the corruption element is there, people would feel, okay, GRA may have collected, but did everything GRA collect get to the Ministry of
Right.
Finance?
Right.
Or Ministry of Finance had all the money, but did they also disperse it in a way that it didn't end in individual pockets? So that is where we need the transparency and accountability, so that citizens everywhere, especially women, can appreciate the work that is done, can appreciate that the money is protected. Because if there is that perception that money is getting into individual pockets, or there are leakages along the way, it also demotivates people. And that's where sometimes you find people negotiating some of these taxes, because they feel, if I could, negotiate around it and not pay, I'm getting more value
Yeah.
than paying when it's going to end in
Yeah.
other private pockets. So
Yeah.
we need to put all of these measures, and it's a lot of work, but other countries have done it, and
Yep.
Ghana is able to do that if only we want to. Yes.
You're absolutely right. Talking about the Ministry of Finance, let's sidetrack a bit and talk about this. The current Minister of Finance has been going to the market, talking to market women, and a lot of Ghanaians are very happy about it. Do you think this is an effective strategy to getting women's voices into fiscal policy? And if not, what do you think are some of the practical ways that this can be done better?
So I think I'll commend him for that, but it's not exclusive. So, and the Minister of Finance is just one person.
Right.
Look at the women groups that we have across this country. Even in Accra alone, look at the number of markets we have. Every day we are getting new markets in Accra, because people are always finding ways to expand new markets, or introduce new markets. So it means that he is just one person and could not. That's why we need systems.
Right.
So if we have those systems in place where the market women can interact, so you are creating an interface between the Ministry of Finance and all those informal spaces
Right.
where we draw resources from. So they don't have to wait for the Minister of Finance to come occasionally.
Right.
But they know that every month, or if it is quarterly, this interface is there where they can also even air some of the issues that they have. We used to have this town halls that the Ministry of Finance
Yeah.
used. And if I recall, just to take us a bit back, when the e-levy was being introduced, I remember the Ministry of Finance went around to do a lot of town halls. But that is an isolated case.
Right.
We don't usually get the benefit of, getting citizens to make inputs in some of this. So I think that is where we need. But it should be structured in a way that people know that even if it is once a year, this is how it is done. And then people can engage those processes and also give feedback, because feedback is also important.
Right.
And then that helps. You may have the best of plans or intentions, but how people experience it, it's different. So the theory may be different from the practice, but we can only know how it feels when we engage with those that are most affected by the plans that we put or policies that we churn out.
Right, absolutely. Then this will be my last question, and then I'll let you go. You do a lot of your work with a feminist lens or under a feminist perspective. So from a feminist perspective, how do you think fair taxation can strengthen trust and democracy?
Yeah, so fair taxation means that our taxes are not gender blind, and then our taxes also have equity.
Right.
Equity doesn't mean that everybody will have the same, but it means that every uniqueness is taken care of.
Right.
So my unique situation would be taken care of. Right. And that's, for me, is where it brings the fairness. So then I don't see that, it is only a certain crop of companies that can get tax exemption and why they are getting tax exemption. So that's some of the challenges that we hear from the field, where people who are small taxpayers feel that, the big taxpayers or the corporates are getting all the benefits, but they are not able to get that. So why are you giving this person tax exemption?
Right.
So all those things should be explained to the understanding and appreciation of citizens or the taxpayer. The more you do that, then people understand.
Right.
There's this issue that we advocated for, the issue of sanitary taxation on sanitary.
In the conversations we've had,
and how is that addressed? How did that even come up? That somebody would just decide that, this is a good source of taking money, but not recognizing that when it comes to women, they don't have a choice. They have to use sanitary pads. That is what it is.
It's just natural.
But they have to be taxed, on sanitary pads. And that is just one of, but you can see that when it comes to consumables, women are the ones who, consume a lot. So when you talk about indirect taxes, women pay a lot.
Yeah.
Because it's the women who go shopping. When you talk about food shopping, it's women. So if women have to pay, we are paying more indirect taxes, it means that women are also contributing a lot. So we should be sensitive to this unique population and know that when we are taxing them, whatever tax we are bringing, how is it affecting them? Is it affecting them negatively? Is it positively? How do we engage them so that they can express some of their own challenges, and these will be used to shape some of the policies that we have.
Right. Thank you so much. That was
Thank you
succinctly
too.
put.
Thank you too for
Thank
the
you so much
opportunity.
for being here, for educating and enlightening us. I have learned so much from my conversation with you today. And we're hoping that our viewers and listeners have also learned a lot and are open to not just keeping the knowledge to themselves, but also sharing. So together we can create more public awareness on how taxation is linked to women's rights and women's, development, economic development, just social development, all around development of women, and in effect, the country or society. Like we've mentioned, it strengthens democracy, it strengthens national development. If half of your population are well taken care of and know why they have to fulfill their end of the social contract, then the entire country benefits. I have been talking to Madame Emefa Nate, beauty, MFA Nate. Initially, I said Nate, and when you pronounce, like, oh my God, I got it wrong. It's Nate.
Yes,
So I've been talking to
yeah,
Madam Beauty, MFA Nate. She is a tax expert. She's been educating us a lot today. This, like I mentioned, is unfortunately our very last episode. Thank you so much, Madam
you. I'm
Beauty,
not
for joining
a
us.
tax expert yet. I'm getting closer.
I mean, well, you're there. I'm forcing it on you. Men are always claiming titles they are nowhere near, so we can take it. It's always when the conversations are getting interesting that you have to wrap up. But it's been amazing sharing this with you all. Thank you for joining us on Women, Taxation and Justice, Shaping Fair Futures. This conversation has been a reminder that tax justice isn't just about numbers, it's about people, most especially women who bear the cost of unjust taxation, but whose stories often go unheard. Do share this episode with a friend, your community, or your network. Let's keep the conversations alive because every voice counts in this building a tax system that works for women and works for all fight. Follow NetRight on all platforms and engage with all our projects. We are at NetRight_GH on Instagram. We are at NetRight on X and NetRight Ghana on Facebook. Until we come your way again with another interesting season, I am Abina Beniwafusu, and this has been NetRight Women, Taxation and Justice, Shaping Fair Futures podcast on the NetRight Pod. It's bye from us here at NetRight Ghana.